that is grievable because he didn't call me back. He obviously didn't call me back either because because of my perceived or actual heterosexuality, homosexual, or bisexuality. I'm off to Brad Marr's office to get me a lawyer, okay, to lawyer up and sue his constituent. This isn't just about religious housing. This isn't just about compelling Regent University, which has married housing for its students, or Christendom College up in Winchester, who has married housing for their students, or Liberty University has married housing for their students in Lynchburg. It's not just about compelling them to violate their deeply held religious convictions and provide housing to people that are same-sex couples, for example. This is about private sector owners and homeowners and lenders and leasers. Now, Senator Wexton said that there's a religious exemption, but if you look at the language of the religious exemption, it provides no relief to these folks, because what it says is you can have an exemption to only rent or lease to people who are the same religion as you, but you can't discriminate against people based on any of the other criteria that are already listed and which they want to add, which is sexual orientation and also gender identity. These are subjective criteria. They're not patent they're not patent criteria. And so what you're doing now is you're opening the doors to all sorts of grievances and complaints because someone perceives the reason why they didn't get the job, or they didn't get the promotion, or they didn't get the house they wanted, or they weren't able to lease the beach house that they wanted. Not just religious employers, not just religious landlords, but every Virginian who feels as if they didn't get the job they wanted, or they didn't get the promotion they wanted, or they were part of a layoff, and they perceive that their supervisor, their boss, or the decision maker that didn't hire them, or fired them, or didn't lease the property to them, made that decision based on their actual or perceived sexuality. For these reasons, and for all the reasons about religious liberty that were previously articulated by Jeff Caruso, we oppose the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Janice. Just a moment, I tell you right. This time we're going to go ahead and just take up the bills, one by one.
Before you do, Mr. Chairman, may I respond briefly to what former Delegate Janice had to say?
Excuse me, Delegate Lee. Delegate Wright, just wait, please, just 1 minute. And
I'd like to just very briefly respond to what
Delegate Lee, we're going to take your bill up first, so just go ahead with your final comments.
Okay, so here are my final comments. Former Delegate Janice seems like he kind of wants it both ways. He says that these laws, when they exist, are almost never being used, and they're also going to cause oblivion in all these lawsuits. Those facts can't both be true. We heard the young man talk about the fact that 44%, and these are blind studies. They send two couples in, 44% they find discrimination. So these are real examples. And I just want to give something from my personal experience briefly. I worked in Congress 15 years ago for a member of Congress. At that time they had Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I had several women, actually at least 3 that I can remember, call in and tell me that they had to submit to the sexual advances of their superior, and if they did not, they would be outed as a lesbian and fired. We had to tell these 3 women there was nothing we could do for them. They didn't want to go for blackmail. They didn't want to accuse them of rape because they would lose this long history. Some of them had worked in defense for many, many years. These laws serve as a prophylactics. What they do is when they pass, people often don't discriminate, and that's a good thing. And lastly, just very quickly, from my own personal experience, in the 1990s, I was a lawyer, a young and up-and-coming lawyer. I had a great boss, still a good man, Republican, actually. I like to think that he very much taught me how to be a lawyer and how to write. I very much respected that man, I still do. In the 1990s, I had a boyfriend, and I learned in one terrible weekend that he was HIV positive and dying of AIDS and had about 3 months to live. It was a very, very hard weekend for me. It was also hard for me because I wasn't out at my job. And I was really afraid to tell my employer that, hey, I'm gay, and I gotta take care of my boyfriend, I need some time off. And I knew he was a big Republican, I knew I might lose my job. And I had to weigh it, and I finally decided it was more important to me to take care of my loved one and risk my job. Now, I came out that next Monday, and to my overwhelming relief, my boss said, Mark, you're a good lawyer, we don't want to lose you, take what time you need. I said he was a good man, but I didn't know that would happen. And this fear, even when, I'll wrap it up, this fear exists. And one of the things that these laws do is they let people not live in fear. And so I would urge you to pass it.
Thank you, Delegate, Delegate Wright, because
Mr. Chairman, I move we lay House Bill 401 on the table.
Delegate Yards. Delegate Yards.
Mr. Chairman, there's a motion on the floor now, that instead of a second, you can have a discussion, but otherwise, we need a second before we can have discussion.
Delegate
We didn't
Yards, Delegate
hear
Wright.
the motion down here.
Delegate Wright is here to request to speak, so I recognize Delegate Wright first. So please, if you would.
Can I speak to the measure?
Yeah, after Delegate Wright. Delegate Wright?
My motion is on the floor.
What was the motion? You repeat the motion, sir.
Yes, I make the motion that we lay House Bill 401 on the table.
The motion has been made and been seconded. The motion is not debatable. It's, members should prepare.
I didn't hear it.
Cast a vote on the electronic vote. 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
No, not for that. That's what you're doing.
Mr. Chairman, mine's not up. Mine's not up, Mr. Chair.
They're not able to.
Mine is a no, but it's not up for me to vote.
She's at the right machine there. Everybody voting, close the roll. Motion to lay on the table is passes 5-2.
Take your time.
Thank you. Let me see, I believe.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Evans up, his bill. Chair recognizes Delegate Harris.
May I have a final word, sir? Before you make a motion?
I don't know if he needs that.
Senator Evans, you got the floor.
Yeah, very briefly. You know, we heard from Mr. Janus talking about how there's, in his world, there's no discrimination at all. I'd like him to visit my world and the world of some of the people standing behind me. When I was an employee after college at one job, I was walking with my boss and he said, "Isn't it great we have no fags working here?" So would I want to come out there? Would I want to see if there was discrimination? Would I want to see if I got fired? I don't think so. And I would just say, imagine you all in your place of business, afraid to display the picture of your lawfully wedded wives or husbands. Imagine that. You're afraid to display their picture. You're afraid to say where you went on vacation. You're afraid to say what you did over the weekend. Most people aren't afraid of that now, but let's make our state employees aware of that. And also, Mr. Janus mentioned Capital One and VCU having these great policies, which we are very proud of in Virginia. And we know that they're smart and support non-discrimination policies. But when people come to Virginia and they move here, those forward-thinking companies, some of them have partners or husbands or wives who would also like to work for a business. And as one of the larger, if not the largest employer, the Commonwealth of Virginia, they'd like to know that they can work here with insurance too, not at the whim of who's governor.
Thanks, Senator Evans. Delegate Yards.
I commend everybody that came here. And I think at the end of the day, the debate that we're having is two great values that really define who we are as Americans. On one hand, there is this deep desire, at least the way I was raised, that you're to treat everybody with dignity and respect. And I think there's this overwhelming desire. I think fundamentally we are a good and decent country, if not a noble one. There is a desire to treat everybody with dignity and respect. There's also a desire to protect freedom of conscience and freedom of religion. So how do we balance that? Now, Winston Churchill once said that Americans always do the right thing after they've exhausted every other possibility. And I think we both have noble goals here. I joke that I'm part of the Leave Us Alone coalition. You live your life the way you see fit, and it dictates of your conscience and your God. And let me live my life as I see fit, and it dictates of my conscience and my God. I think part of my concern about some of these bills that I saw, and I read every bill, and I'm also in the Courts of Justice Committee, and we like to joke that we don't vote on ideas, we vote on the law. And we also realize that there will be a judge somewhere in Lynchburg or Galax or whatever that's going to be trying to interpret what we pass as a body. And they're not gonna have the benefit of the testimony of the patrons and other individuals and the witnesses that were here today. And so the deep concern that I have is that particularly 36-96.2, the changes there would force private religious institutions, Liberty University and Region, that have very strict policies that dictate to their conscience, so strict that they do not allow non-married heterosexual couples to live together. Now, for a lot of people in this room, we may think that's antiquated, we may think that's living behind the times. But at the end of the day, we live in a society that recognizes I may disagree with your religious beliefs, I may think they're outdated or antiquated, but you absolutely have that protection under the law to live your life to the dictates of your conscience. And so I would love to get to yes on some of these until I see a proper exemption that would give to these religious institutions. That's why I had to vote no. And so I'd like to at some point get to a bill we all can agree on, and maybe at some point we can. But that, I think, is those two competing values that I think that we're trying to balance. And we're still trying to figure it out. But listen, the stories and the testimony today in many ways was heartbreaking. And I commend everybody for taking the time to come and speak to the committee. We're better for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Leon. She said, Chairman, got Doug's card. Quick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to respond. I think that in some of our institutions, don't they have a code of conduct where this law would not apply?
I don't know. I never attended either one of those schools, so I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, Delegate Miaris, I actually have a copy of the Liberty Way, which is their rules for student conduct, and sexual relations outside of a biblically ordained marriage between a natural-born man and a natural-born woman are not permissible at Liberty University. Activities outside of these standards and guidelines are violations of the Student Honor Code. So I'd be interested to see what they do with their same-sex couple marriage, with their same-sex couple students now, because it appears that either they're not being admitted or they're being expelled.
Thank you, Senator. Delegate Wright.
Mr. Chair, I move that, Senate Bill 202 be laid on the table.
Thank you. The motion's been made and duly seconded, and the motion's not the tables. The members should prepare to vote on the electronic voting machine. Clerk, close the roll. The motion on the table is passes by a vote of 5-2. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the committee for their hearing. I'd like to also thank Delegate Miaris for your desire to get to yes, and look forward to working with you again.
Thank you, Senator. Delegate Simon.
Mr. Chairman, I know it's been a long meeting, so I'm gonna make two quick points. One is to this issue that by having the, this perceived sexual orientation, we're opening up this world of all kinds of lawsuits. You know, we already have on line 60 of my bill, or line 61, and we protect people with handicap. The definition of handicap, it's being handicapped or being regarded as having such an impairment. Okay, so we've got that already in the law, so that's a red herring. That's not, in fact, anything you ought to be concerned about when it comes to sexual orientation discrimination. And this issue of religious, sincerely held religious beliefs. In the 1960s, prior to Loving versus Virginia, in fact, in the opinion in Virginia that upheld miscegenation, we heard that there are people with a sincerely held religious belief that races ought to stay on the continents where they were born and not be together and mix. And that was a sincerely held religious belief. There are certain sincerely held religious beliefs which are so discriminatory that we don't give them the protection of the law, and this is one of those cases, and I hope there'll be a pleasure to the committee to please pass this bill.
Thank you, Senator.
Promotion.
Delegate Carr.
Move to report. Second.
Substitute motion, Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Wright, have a substitute motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move, leave House Bill 1547 on the table.
The motion made to lay on the table is seconded. Which is not in bills, the members should prepare to vote on the electronic voting machine. Close the roll. The motion on the table is passed by voting 5-2. And I believe Next up is Senator Baxter. Bill 423.
Mr. Chairman, I know that these arguments have been made. It's really not that long ago that we were a commonwealth where we would have red lines, in redlining in our communities, restrictive covenants in our deeds. And this is, if we have an opportunity to protect these folks, we really should take the opportunity to do it.
Mr. Chair.
Chair recognizes, Delegate McCoy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I just want to speak to it, even though some of the bills have been laid on the table, but I want to speak to the issue. You know, I've sat there and I've listened year after year to this. Matter of fact, I even at some point presented a bill. And in many ways, I am just so saddened by the fact that we've not gotten any further than this in this commonwealth and in many ways in our society. You know, and I've said it before, so some of you who are here have heard this statement before, that I've been discriminated, you know, against. It's been a double discrimination. I'm an African American and I am a woman. And it seems like these systems of hierarchy that have been established over the years does a disservice to us as a commonwealth. And we must get beyond this. No matter how we feel about people's lives or what they're doing, there must be efforts made to dismantle, again, these systems of hierarchy that says, you're not good, I choose you because you're better. I mean, we have an obligation as leaders to set the standards. We have an obligation to be giants in this and to support anytime anyone is being discriminated against for any reason. And I really mean that. There are, you know, when we sat here, you know, you raised the question, I can't help from thinking, would these be my colleagues? Would you all, if it was the enslaved Africans coming, or would it have been okay? Because there were lawmakers that said, yes, we are going to enslave you and we're going to continue to allow it to happen for 4 years. If you were African American and went beyond the time during slavery, would you then be discriminated against because you were black and they could recognize the fact that there was a different color of your skin? Women have always been discriminated against. And it is time for us to take a lead in dismantling, again, these systems of hierarchy. It is people, regardless of their sexual orientation, regardless of the color of their skin, regardless of their gender, must be treated with dignity. They must be treated with respect in an honorable way. And we must be leaders in cultivating the right spirit in terms of how people are treated. And so to continue to say no, when we know that people are being treated. And Bill, Janice, I love Bill, but Bill, as a white man, sometimes I wonder in America if you really know what discrimination is. And it's a question because I want to be on a television screen. I am doing it because I know how it feels. My dad was discriminated as an African American for years working a job. For years. And when he retired after 40 years, he couldn't even get a retirement enough to take care of him and my mother. And so it doesn't feel good. And when it doesn't feel good for me as a woman, and many, many times I've been discriminated against as a woman, but as an African American, much more, then I know it doesn't feel good to one of them, to individuals who have, because of their sexual orientation. And we must stand up and do something about it.
Thank you, Delegate.
Mr. Chairman, I have a motion. I move we lay Senate Bill 423 on the table.
And we have a motion which has been seconded. Again, the label table is not there. The members will cast their vote on the electronic voting machine. Close the rolls. The motion, the label table is passed by a vote of 5-2. That completes the docket of subcommittee number